Well, hello and welcome to the Cup of Joy International. Today we're beginning a series in the School of Faith on emotions. You know, this study is going to really be an interesting study, I believe, because you're going to begin to see how your emotions control a lot of your life, a lot of your decisions. A lot of the situations that you have found yourself in have been the results of your emotional outburst. Now, we're going to just skim the surface today, beginning just an 8-10 minute recording on emotions, and we're going to do this over several weeks. So you're going to have to listen over the next several weeks to really understand what we're talking about. Today we're going to look at this. Number one, God has given us emotions. It's if you've ever listened to me preach in a church setting, you know I am a very emotional person. Years ago, God gave me the ability to weep in His presence, especially when I'm preaching the Word of God. I get very involved in what I'm doing. I put everything I've got into it. And so emotions for me is a big thing. I've had to learn over the years to control my emotions. So the first point I want to make today is this: God has made us an emotional being. We have the ability to cry, to weep, to have joy. So many emotions can be expressed. We, by nature, tend to worry. Most of the time, we worry about things that never get around to happening. So indeed, God has given us emotions. Emotions is part of our soulish nature: mind, emotions, and will. Now, I chose to deal with the emotions first because I believe so many of us are controlled by our emotions. Is this right or wrong? Well, we're going to look at that. We're going to analyze that question. Well, the second point is this: since God has made us an emotional being, we have emotions. It's certainly part of our personality. Shouldn't we use them? And the answer to that question is going to be very obvious: yes. We're going to look at what the Bible teaches about emotions in a later lesson, how God was emotional, how the Apostle Paul was emotional, how in the Scripture, you see it over and over and over again, that emotions are used. Sometimes not in a good setting, sometimes not in a good way, and sometimes in a very powerful way. It says that Jesus wept. When Lazarus died, Mary and Martha were worried and cumbersome and just frustrated with the whole situation. And Jesus wept. And certainly weeping is a strong, strong emotion. The third point is this: our emotions should never control us. If your emotions are controlling you today, then your life is a wreck. I've thought about this. I hesitate to make this comment. I may even get some of y'all to email me over this comment, which would be good. I've been trying to get you to email me now for weeks, and you're not doing it. Well, who is controlled by the emotions the most, men or women? Now, I'm a very emotional guy, but most men are not. Most men are not emotional at all. They keep their emotions bagged up, sealed up, and very seldom ever let them out. Matter of fact, in America today, it's almost thought of that to be strong, you got to have no emotions. Well, I disagree with that. I disagree with that completely. I believe it's okay to let others see your emotions. I believe it's good and godly to allow God to see your emotions, the deepness in your spirit toward Him, the longing toward Him. And you express that emotionally. I remember years ago I preached a series on praise and worship, which is a very emotional experience. And one of the ladies in the church sat on the front row, and she played the organ. And when she got through playing the organ and she came to sit on the front row and I'd preach my sermon, and she'd sit there with her fingers in her ears because she thought worship was not about emotions. That there should never be clapping or an expression or shouting or joy or any expression of emotions in worship. So I don't know who is most emotional, the man or the woman, but I'd say, just a guess now, don't get too mad at me, but I'd say it's probably a bigger problem with women than it is with men. Please, ladies, don't get offended with me. I don't mean to be offensive with you. But I do want to ask you some personal questions, like the problems in your marriage. Is it because you're so doggone emotional? The problems with you and your children, is it because you're so emotional you get upset over the least little thing? A lot of people have what I call surface anger. What is surface anger? It means that you're filled up with anger all the way up to the brim. I mean, above your eyeballs. And the least little thing will set you off. And I mean, you explode like some kind of big bomb or something. And the individuals that you're exploding on is your husband and your children. Now, some of you, I'm hitting the ball. I'm hitting a home run here. Well, never let your emotions control you. Never. Never let your emotions govern you. Never. No. Your emotions are like a horse. I said, Brother Harper, what do you mean they like a horse? Well, I don't know how much you know about a horse. But a horse is a wild animal. Strength, strong. When I was a kid coming up, we had a horse. A lot of debate as to who the horse was, mine or my sister's. If you ask my sister, she'll tell you, that's my sister Jeannie. She'll tell you she bought the horse and it was hers. And that's probably true. She's the only one that had any money. I didn't have none. So I reckon it was hers. But you couldn't have told me that when I was a teenager. That was my horse. It's a Palomino, quarter horse, beautiful horse. But you talking about strong. My uncle had a horse, and I forget, I think it was a quarter horse. And when you'd get on that horse, and as long as you was going away from the barn, which to him was home, you going away from the barn, that horse was fine. No problems. But the moment you got out a little ways away from the barn and you turned around to come back home, that horse was going to take off in a dead run and you wasn't going to stop it. And he'd run, and the closer he got to the barn, the faster he'd get. And when he got to the barn, guess what? He wasn't stopping. No, he ran right up underneath the barn and knocked you off. Now, I don't know what that's called, and I don't know why he wanted to do that. But I know we had to learn how to control that. You see, your emotions are like a horse. Do you know much about a horse? Let me ask you a question. If a horse falls down on the ground, can he get up without first raising up his head? No, he can't. He cannot get up without first raising up his head. So if the horse falls on the ground, which they're not likely to do, but sometimes they do, if he falls on the ground, do you know you can take your foot and put your foot on that horse's head, and that horse, as big as he is, some of them are huge. Strength, strong. But that horse is not able to get up off the ground as long as you got your foot on that horse's head, because he can't maneuver the rest of his body to get up. He has to first jerk his head up, and when he jerks his head up, you better watch out. He's coming off the ground. You see, your emotions are a lot like a horse. Not like a horse. They got to be controlled. Let me ask you a question. You ever put a bit in a horse's mouth? Why do we do that? With my horse, I'd catch him, I'd get a little feed and catch him, and then I would get the bridle and put the bridle on his head and put that bit in his mouth. And at first, when I was trying to learn how to ride him, I had to put a special kind of bit in his mouth that it sounded kind of cruel, and I reckon it was. I didn't think about it at that time. But man, when you pull back on them reins, that bit, it would squeeze down his mouth, and if he didn't do what you was trying to get him to do, it'd cut him. Control. You controlled him. You see, he was much stronger than me. I was just a teenage boy. Matter of fact, he was stronger than all of us kids put together. He could have easily controlled us and hurt us, but we learned how to control him. Now, what we're going to study over the next several weeks is how do you control your emotions? How do you control your emotions? You see, a horse, let's say the horse wants to rear up on you. Well, how do you control that horse? How do you keep the horse from rearing up? If he rears up, he's going to throw your old butt off. He is. You've been thrown off by a horse. It's not a very pleasant experience. Well, you have to get what's called a tie down. A tie down. And it keeps the horse from raising its head, you see, because it can't rear up unless it raises its head. When it raises its head, then it can control the rest of its body, and it can rear straight up and throw you off. So you put this tie down on the horse so the horse can't do that. You ever thought about putting a tie down on your emotions? You ever thought about diligently working over several weeks of bringing your emotions under control? I'm not trying to tell you not to cry. I'm not trying to tell you not to be joyful. I'm not trying to tell you not to weep. I'm not even trying to tell you not to be angry. The Bible said, be angry and sin not. Be angry and sin not. It doesn't say don't be angry. It just says when you're going to get angry, don't cross over the line and get into sin. Well, how do you do that? You put a tie down on your anger. You put a tie down on your emotions. Well, that's enough. My time is gone. I hope you'll tune in over the next few weeks and listen to this series, School of Faith, Emotions. School of Faith, Emotions. It has been good to have you on the Cup of Joy International today. My name is Pastor Aubrey Foster, and remember, I love you. I want to be your pastor on Facebook. Why don't you email me? CAMP, C-A-M-P, 7501 @gmail.com. All righty, I'm signing off today, and I'll tell you, I love you. Bye.